This is Van Electric Ghost. We're live on the air with Mario Wissa. How you doing today? Welcome to the Fan Electric Ghost podcast.
Thank you so much. I am super stoked to be here right now, and I am looking forward to our experience to unfold and share with other people. So let's do it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about what is communication and why it's important. We've got your URL there, mariowizza.com,
Yep,
and that will be fully clickable for everybody can check that out later. But
very
again, we're
cool.
going to talk about what is communication, why it's important. Before we get to that, though, I always ask every guest on the show, what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
I love that. Oh my God, there is so many questions. Why do I do what I do? Why is communication important? What is communication? Okay, let me start by why I do what I do. Um, Very frankly, and I'll try and keep the story short because it's actually a long story. I really noticed from really young age that something was amiss, something was missing from the dynamics and relationships that were happening around me between my siblings, my parents, even my friends in school, or even at the gym. I used to practice karate. When there's misunderstanding or conflict that arises, people tend to get too emotional and they respond. Actually, they don't even respond, they react in a way that's not healthy to the
Yeah.
experience. And from really young age, like Phantom, honestly, I used to think to myself, there must be a better way. Why are they behaving this way? There must be a better way. So I always wondered, I really did, until I came across this book. It's called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, like 20 years ago. And when I learned that most of our behaviors and actions are predetermined the first 7 years in our lives, from the day we're born until 7 years old, our subconscious is formed. And our subconscious dictates about 90% of our future, how we behave, how we interpret the world, how we react or respond, and the list goes on and on. Well, I thought that was a really interesting concept, the power of our subconscious mind, yet there was a lot more to learn. So I went back to college and I started studying business, accounting, IT, psychology, sociology, anthropology. I even studied volcanoes and dinosaurs until I came across communication. One communication class that I took. And for me, a huge light bulb came on. And honestly, it, to be very frank, for me, it felt like a whole new world, like Disney, you know? The
Mhm.
communication class like helped me to see the world from a different perspective and a healthy one. And I realized this is my it. So, we hear so many people like on the stages and interviews where they say, once you find your it, there's no turning back. Your it is your purpose. And I always wondered for such a long time, what does that mean? And it's not easy to explain or to be expressed. It needs to be experienced once we find our it is. So I realized that the power of communication is profound, life altering, can improve relationships. Not only opens doors, communication can create doors by listening, being intentional with our message, and to focus that the words we use, they actually create scenarios, create story. So I practiced communication with myself, which is intrapersonal communication. We'll dive into this later. And I also, as I'm doing my research and interviewed thousands of people, I realized that the power of communication is so profound, it needs to be known around the globe. Hence, I'm traveling Africa next month for about 4 months and talk about communication. What is communication? The power of it, how we can use it and harness it intentionally and mindfully. That's why I am doing what I'm doing. Um, Simply put, it makes my heart tick. Um, Communication is the air that I breathe. So next question, which is what is communication? Do you want me to dive there or you want to ask me something first?
Well, I think that communication is super important. If you think about it, your perspective in the world is based on who you engage with. And, being a creative person,
Hmm.
I've talked to a lot of writers, I talk to film directors, I talk to creative people, musicians, and it's the ability to kind of feel what's going on around them, what's inside them, and then the magic is that they were able to synthesize the external and the internal, like the microcosm and the macrocosm.
Yes, yes.
And part of what I do with this podcast, I've had over 1,000 episodes, and to me,
Nice.
it's like an master class in humanity. And as a writer, having all those interviews changed my perspective to being more expansive, right? So if you're more expansive, you're less likely to be in a lane, right? You start to think about cross
Right? So if
genre,
you're more expansive,
cross,
you're less
you know.
likely to be in a lane.
Oh, what happened there? We're getting,
Can you hear me there?
yeah, I just got
Oh,
like an echo, like
little
somehow,
bit.
but
It's
that's
fine.
all right. But yeah, I understand what I'm saying. It's like if you're more expansive, you're less limited belief, more growth mindset, then you don't end up falling into traps of just being in an echo chamber. Oh,
I actually really like that you bring this up because it's true. Many of the artists and singers, for example, or performers, they love what they do because that's how they communicate their inner world to the outside world. And they tend to be content with their creation. Finances and money flow their way. They don't have to worry about this. Just simply being authentic and expressing our inner world intentionally very, very, very powerful, I have to say.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's also important to like get listening skills because I find like
Uh,
today, like I in my day job, I'm a software guy. I work in
oh,
software design
cool.
for the last 30 years, and then I do podcasting, I do music. So I left right brain. I try to do both. Uh, and what I
That's good for
find
you.
is that if you are able to be open to a lot of different lanes and to be able to listen to people, because as a musician, there's a lot of stuff that happens where we say it's not just the notes that you hear, it's the notes you don't hear. It's the space between the music. It's the nonverbal communication between
True.
bandmates,
So true.
right? And if you just focus on the actual words, like what's behind the words, what's the context
Mhm.
of the words, you know, like that takes a little bit because some people sometimes it's not the obvious. It takes a little more depth. And do we have the attention span or the listening skills to actually read the situational awareness of what's going on?
That's beautiful. And as I'm listening to you, I actually remember, I find it really important and profound to think about this. When we hear a music track or a song out there, most of us listen to the song and get really engaged, like it, or it keeps playing in our head, or maybe play. I have some favorite tracks that I play over and over and over. Do you know this new song by what is it? It's called "Let's Go" by Jackson Gamble. I keep playing this. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Mhm.
Well, the thing is, when we listen to the song at this time, either for the first time or the second time or 100th time, most of us are not aware that this artist, this singer, this producer practiced hundreds of times, if not more than that, to bring the final version to us. What I'm trying to say here is communication and practicing it is not about necessarily perfection. It's about practice, 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 practice. And as we are practicing and our skills become sharper and become more effective, we may not be aware of it so much, but other people go like, wow, you're really impactful with your communication or your style. Well, thank you for saying that, but I have been practicing for such a long time to get to where I am right now. And this is really important to keep in mind because empathy and compassion is really important when it comes to how we communicate with ourselves and other people. And I feel like I'm diving too deep, too far right now, so I'm going to pause and let you
No,
lead that
that makes
topic here.
that makes a lot of sense because like you got to have self love and
Mhm.
you have to understand your own self talk before you can actually even understand other people. And I think a lot of times, like you're saying, people don't understand that it's the 10,000 hours that as a musician
Yes.
on my piano to get me to the point where I don't have to look at it, right? And how I can, you see musicians, they're not looking at the guitar, they're not looking at the bass, not looking at their instrument. They have like this muscle memory.
Mastered.
It's a mastery. And so
Yeah.
they're able to kind of in the moment, if somebody hits a note that's unexpected, they have a mechanism to be able to know what to do. Herbie Hancock talked about this with Miles Davis. He said one day they were doing a show, he hit a chord that wasn't part of the song.
Mm-hmm.
Miles actually matched his chord, and it wasn't the way the song was written. And later he said, you shouldn't beat yourself up because
Uh-huh.
the whole point is to be kind of in the moment, that
Yes.
that flow state. And then Herbie said, he started to not obsess about trying to be perfect. That the happy accident in art is a big thing. In science, in my software design, happy accidents happen there too. So left brain, right brain.
Mm-hmm.
Have a project plan, could say we're doing X, but then we find Y and Z. Y and Z are better than X. Go to
Mm-hmm.
the manager and said what we were doing is actually not as good as what we just found out by mistake. And it's the same idea. It's like the jazz band goes, evolves the song. The software developer comes up with a new idea that was unexpected. It's being willing to deal with the unexpected and not think it's terrible and not think it's the end of the world. It's actually probably the beginning of the next world.
I love that. Being able to deal with the unexpected, um, that really takes showing up, being authentic, being real about what we know and we don't know, uh, being grounded, feeling secure about where we stand. That's very, very important. And it helps us to deal with what comes our way, as you said. So, absolutely. Yep.
So I
Love it.
think it's like being a coach is like I think it's really cool because like being a producer, being a teacher, being a mentor, you pay it forward. You take what you've learned
Mhm.
and you pass it on to another person. I think human beings have always like oral history.
Yep.
It's
Storytellers. Yep.
storytellers, I'm part Cherokee and part Blackfoot.
Yep.
And the
Yep.
oral histories of indigenous peoples in America, that's what was done. That's what still was done, right? If you still have a grandpa or great grandpa that was a Blackfoot, they'll tell you,
Hmm.
they'll give you those stories. And, when you go to college and you're in that classroom and doing the lecture, it's not just all what you read, it's the oral communication, that to
Absolutely.
me, and so it's super important, like how to listen, like you were saying, like
Hmm.
how do you listen in today's world with so many distractions and so much noise?
Hmm.
I would ask you, like in a world like this, where you have your watch and your cell phone and your computer and all these things sending you signals all day.
Hmm.
I'm a child of the '70s. I didn't have that.
Hmm.
Right? I could
Hmm.
sit and read a book. There's only 4 channels of TV.
Yeah.
Right? My toy was like Lego or Erector sets. I had my imagination. I created my own world. I wasn't fed like a Final Fantasy VII world. So in this kind of world, how do you actually cut through all that?
Is that a direct question for me right now?
Yeah, in
Okay.
terms of
I,
like teaching communication, because like is listening is key, right?
all right. So you and I have established before we start recording that we both are standing. So we kind of like move a lot. We have a lot of energy. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the moment I hear your question, most often when I hear questions about communication, I get super ecstatic, exuberant. So I kind of move around a lot. So hopefully that's not confusing to anyone. I love your question. That is so true. To be able to cut through the distraction and the overwhelming stimuli in our life is really crucial. And that brings me to something very important I need to bring to our discussion here, which is the understanding of the difference between interpersonal and intrapersonal, because that's where our power relies. You mentioned this before, like um, the silence or the pause or the space between the words and the music. There's a subtle message that being sent there. And this is actually really similar to understanding the differences or understanding what each one is. Interpersonal and intrapersonal communication. Do I talk about this first, or do I talk about what is communication first? You tell me.
Well, no, that's just a point for people. You keep on talking about what you were responding to.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to first, because before we start talking about interpersonal and intrapersonal communication, or even group communication, any type of communication, we need to be crystal clear. What is communication? And this is very important. When I do my workshop and there are 30 to 40 people in my session, my workshop, and I ask each person, what is communication? I get 30, 40 different answers, and none of them is wrong, because we all see communication differently. If you open dictionary, if you have paper copy of dictionary, do people have that anymore? I don't know. And you look up communication, I don't, it's probably like a, yeah, it would be like a treasure if you have a paper copy of dictionary. If you open up the dictionary and look up communication, you will get a specific definition. If you Google it, you will get a different definition. If you ask AI, you will get a different definition. So for my almost 2 decades of research, in a humble way, the privilege of being researcher, you get to the point based on your experiences, your understanding, you start to coin your own definitions for specific terms. And that's exactly what happened with me. So the way I see communication, I'm going to share this with you and our audience, our live audience now. I see communication as a non-stop, voluntary, and involuntary process of exchanging information, knowledge, energy, and even on a quantum level, vibration. I repeat it again for the sake of all of us. I see communication as a non-stop, voluntary and involuntary process of exchanging information, knowledge, energy, and vibration. Simply put, with this complicated academic definition, simply put, in everyday language, I say that we are communicating nonstop. We are a communicating being. Our existence is communication. For the last minute or so, I'm speaking, and Phantom, you're listening to me. You are communicating your existence with me. This is very important, really crucial to be aware of. So, the communication that we produce and share, it could be intentional or unintentional, basically mindfully or mindlessly. So
Mhm.
to be aware of that. Now, let's put that on the side for now. Now we're clear what communication is. Now let's talk about the most popular form type of communication, which is interpersonal. INTER. Interpersonal communication, like what you and I are having right now, basically 101. It's also kind of like digital communication. So we're doing intentional digital communication. And the second most popular type of communication is group communication. That's 3 or more people, which eventually becomes more sophisticated the larger the group is. So it becomes like organizational communication, hierarchy communication, strategic communication. The list goes on and on. And another type of communication, which is 70% of my research, is intrapersonal communication. INTRA, intrapersonal communication. Basically, how we converse with ourselves. What is the inner dialogue? The interesting fact about this type of communication, it is happening non-stop, 24/7. Even in our sleep, we dream. That's communication. You're listening to me right now, Phantom, and you're evaluating what I'm saying. You have some internal reflection on it, like, oh, I want to ask Mario about this. Oh, what does he mean by this? Oh, I like that he made that statement or he made that comment. This inner dialogue is always happening. Now, why this is crucial to bring up and to respond to your inquiry about how we can manage the outside stimuli, and we can call them distraction. We call them distraction if we are not managing those influences on the outside. When we have a grounded inner dialogue, aka intrapersonal communication, when we are mindful and deliberately cultivating our own mind and our inner voice, that makes us feel more grounded, and we do not get distracted that easily. You become like a solid concrete building, like a mountain. You don't get distracted. You know how big the mountain is? Not any wind or any rain or any like snow or rain. It doesn't really move the mountain. You just become so grounded, and you get to choose what influences you and what does not influence you. We become our own gate for our own mind, temple. There's a reason why this place is called temple. Temple, what is temple? It's like a holy place. This is a holy place. So when we become aware of this being temple, our own brain, mind, the two separate things, brain and mind, when we become aware this is temple, we treat it as such. What comes in, it needs to be consciously chosen. And what it creates, what it puts out, it needs to be intentional and deliberate, because we are aware of the ripple effect of the words that we create.
I would argue today that sometimes people don't seem to be aware that their words have intended consequences. Because there seem to be a lot of people, if you look at it, like I was a political science major.
Cool.
So if you see a group of people in the macrocosm that are told that something is in their interest, but it actually is not in their interest, right? And they actually go for something that actually takes away benefits, takes away access, takes away things, but they didn't realize that because they didn't actually hear it in the they heard it. There was like a subliminal message, or
Yes.
it was a manufactured message, or was psychologically created in a way to trigger them to do an immediate response that actually is not in their best interest. It's more of an emotional response rather than a logical response. And then suddenly they say, I didn't think that you were going to do that to me. I thought you were going to do that to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see these groups of people saying, "Well, I didn't know you were taking this away from me. I thought you were taking away from them."
Mm-hmm.
And we see this kind of dynamic happening in the US a lot right now.
Well, Phantom, this really encourages me to bring a very important aspect and outcome of my research. So, it just happened. It's not necessarily. So, my first book, the title is Empowering Communication Unleashed. The subtitle is the reason why I bring this up now. Excuse me. The subtitle is The Most Powerful Voice You Will Ever Hear Is Your Own. The most powerful voice you will ever hear is your own. Now, to be crystal clear, I am mindfully using the inner voice. Actually, there's no inner voice. It's basically neurons in our brain, literally, physically, they're firing and they're sending information. So, really, there's no voice, but we use the word voice just to make it easy to talk about. Now, for my research, I realized that there's a great deal of personalities out there who are not aware of their inner voice, their own inner dialogue. Some of them are aware of it and they don't know what to do with it. They feel like this voice is like driving them everywhere to do things. And some people say, I have more than one voice. Well, we need therapy. Okay. You don't have more than one voice. You just have one voice. Okay. You just feel like confused. This is real therapy. And I've done therapy myself for a long time. So it's really helpful. So to be aware of this inner voice, that it is the most powerful voice we'll ever hear, that means whatever is being said to us from the outside, unless we take it on intentionally and we believe it, it doesn't become ours. So, actually, to be crystal clear, Phantom, here, that our inner voice, as I mentioned earlier, was cultivated like the first 7 years of our lives. And this is actually accumulation of all the voices around us: mom, dad, siblings, friends, the list goes on and on. We basically, all the voices around us cultivates our inner voice. That's the first 7 years of our lives. At some point, we have to pause and become aware of this inner dialogue and cultivate it intentionally. And sometimes we have to put our foot down and challenge that voice. Is that true?
I
Is that
believe.
real?
Yeah,
What would you say? Say again?
but that's like kind of like the idea of the looking glass self, where your self
Yes,
examination. The Victorians
absolutely.
talked about it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
some people don't want to deal with that. They push it down, and then
Yep.
sometimes there's a crucible moment, or you hit your maximum overload, and then suddenly you hit with it, and you have to deal with it because it just some becomes like you can't get away from it anymore.
I love that you say that you have to deal with it. It might sound overwhelming to some people to think that, oh, I have to deal with it. Yet it's actually true, because it's very important to realize that as we are getting older and as we are aging, this inner voice becomes more concrete. One, two, it becomes louder with time. And one of the reasons, like, when we get like older, when we pass like 70, 80 years of age, people tend to like say what's on their mind. There's no filter.
No filter. Yeah, grandpa has no filter. Grandpa.
Yeah, no filter. Whatever is on my mind is like on my tongue right away. This is very powerful to become aware of, because the inner voice that if we cultivate it intentionally, is going to serve us for the rest of our lives. If it becomes random and not cultivated intentionally, we become servant to that voice.
Mm, yeah, I can see
I'm going to
that.
pause here to let everyone marinate on this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are servants to that. But like you can be that to yourself until you're like you have to. I think self-examination is a continual effort that you never have to never stop until you're not here. That you're never perfect, but you could strive for it. But I tend to think the perfection trap is a whole nother issue. That as an artist, I believe in the happy accident. I believe
Yes.
in the flow state. I
Yes.
believe it's a good idea if you're an author to have an outline. It's a good idea to do character development, but it's also a good idea to have that flow state session where you just go at the typewriter, or you go at the voice memo, you just put it down. What kind of muse gave it to you? Wait, this idea of the muse, well, it's kind of like your inner voice and your outer voice, and you hear both, and you put it down, and you're not afraid of it. You embrace it, and when you are able to kind of feel that, then I think that you are able to self actualize more because you have less restraints, less less ceilings that you put on yourself.
Um, you actually bring up this term that is somewhat popular, and for some people, it sounds like mystical. That term is state of flow. What does that mean? Uh, Again, it's one of the things to be experienced, yet we need to figure out a way to communicate about it, to help other people to research it and try to experiment with it. So there's a very popular psychology term. It's called cognitive dissonance. I think you might be
Mhm.
familiar with it. Many people might be familiar with it. Cognitive dissonance, basically what we think and what we do are not aligned up.
Yeah, no alignment.
So
Yeah.
yeah, no alignment. So what we think, what we say, what we do, when these three line up, that is a state of flow. I
Yeah.
love what I do. I love my own thoughts. Time does not exist. Like, honestly, when we love what we do and our inner dialogue is helpful, empowering, inspiring, and every step that we take is basically following our purpose in life, that is the state of flow. Hence, the people who have, like, quote unquote, state of flow and enjoying what they're doing, time is non existent to them. A year can go by and go like, whoa, 12 months have gone by so fast because they're enjoying what they're doing. They are so in the moment. They're being real with themselves. And for someone to be real with themselves, it took me many years to really understand that, to be very frank. is to actually be vulnerable with one's self.
Yeah, I think that's like as a musician, I would kind of describe it when I'm with my group, we're on stage and we get in this zone, right? You get in
Yes.
this zone where people call it like the groove,
Yes.
and there's a lot of nonverbal communication, right? We're kind of nodding at each other, looking at each other. Just a glance at the drummer, he knows what I mean. Glance at
Yep.
the bass player, he knows what I mean. I don't have to actually say it. We're locked in. And that can happen. I've talked to writers that get into that groove. I've talked to
Yes.
actors. I've talked to painters. I've talked to a lot of creative people. I've talked to programmers that suddenly got in the groove and got in this thing. It's like I'm in the zone. They didn't even know that, 6 hours went by and they boom, wrote the code and this came to them. And I'm like,
Yep.
well, how's that happen? It's like, well, you kind of have to have trust in yourself.
Yes.
If you have the trust that you did the 10,000 hours, you did the work, that you can do it, that you don't, you're not doubting all the time, not doubting every single move, that you're willing to allow it to happen. Permission structure. And that's it. It's a process. It doesn't. Some people might say it comes easy. I don't think it does. I think it's a lot of work.
Hmm. Um, I used to know who came up with this 10,000 hours idea. I think it's like from the 60s or the 70s.
Yeah, I
And
think so.
honestly, there's a fact to it that are we all familiar with the saying, we become what we think about most of the time? Well, let me share this with you. I discovered for almost 2 decades of research that I know just that statement, we become what we think about most of the time. For some people, it might sound overwhelming. For other people, go like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Well, what I discovered from my research that what we think, what we say, what we do creates the future you. What you think, what you say, what you do create the future you. This is very important responsibility to take on. To be very frank with you and our live audience right now, because think about this. The following statements are being made almost on daily basis. Oh, she made me do this, or he made me say that. They triggered me. They touched my soft spot. They pushed my button. They made me do that. Okay. They, he, she. What about you? How
The
much
other,
control do you have in that?
the other. Whether it seems like we're in the blame game, the like resentment
Yes.
game, whether the responsibility game of going back to the looking glass self. You are you, right? You are made up of all the experiences that ever happened. There's nobody like you, right? And you made choices, and there might be reasons why you made those choices, but
Yes.
a lot of times, like it's easier to say the other triggered me,
Mm-hmm.
that this person doing X is offending me. This
Yep.
person doing X is doing something that I think is wrong, so they shouldn't be allowed to do it. And the freedom, it's my freedom to tell them not to do it. I'm like, really? What does that have to do with you? Like, you don't have to like what they're doing. You don't have to look at what they're doing. You have to handle what you're able to handle, right? And why would you go and project your inability to process something and put it on someone else? And I find that as like the kind of trauma of our time. Like we have so many people trying to control other people when they can't control themselves.
Yes. Yes. Okay, I have something really exciting to share with you, at least exciting for me, hopefully for our listeners as well. Um, are we able to use a strong language here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. It depends what kind of strong language. Okay. So one of the things I really like to bring up in my workshops, imagine this, Phantom. You're walking down the street and just like in your own head, just walking like going to the grocery store or something. And halfway through the grocery store, someone passes you, walk in the opposite direction, and they just look at you and they just make the following comment. Okay. You look really stupid. and they're just like passing you and just, how would you respond to that?
But especially when you can get into a fighting stance, or you can let it blow off you. You know, you can be
So
at like road rage, or you can
yeah,
say,
yeah.
"Well, that's his problem. That's not my problem."
Yeah, someone you don't know, someone you've never seen, you didn't even expect to be engaged with like random people in conversation. So the reason why I was asking if we can use strong language because yes, if someone says this to you unexpectedly and you did not anticipate it, you might just jump them and beat the shit out of them. That's for the initial human response.
Yeah, that's like reactionary.
Reaction, thank you. Reactionary, not responding. Another option is there are infinite way to respond to this. FYI, I'm just bringing some options over here. Another option is to just simply look at them and go like, "Do I know you?"
Yeah,
You might
what's
just say
that?
that. That's very calm, isn't it? Or like, you know. Another option to you might tell yourself like, "Oh, they think this of me. I don't think myself that way." Okay, just moving on forward. A fourth option to just simply not even pay attention
Yeah,
and
not engage.
smile and just keep exactly not to engage and just move on forward. I'm giving this classic example, which a huge discussion in my workshops, that we actually get to choose when we are conscious, intentional, and mindful. We get to choose what influence our inner world and what does not. When we respect our inner space, that's what we are able to do. And instead of saying, "Oh, they did that to me, they made me feel this way," no, I pause and go like, how much do I have to do with this?
You're like the
So
mountain. You said like the mountain doesn't get
yes.
affected by the wind or the rain or the snow. If you're the rock, then like that just bounced off me.
Yeah, so check this out. I'm actually really big on TikTok. There's a huge platform there, and I made this video a couple of weeks ago, um, where I basically said you need to be aware whether you are pursuing being a victim or being victorious.
Yeah.
If I'm being victim, is like, oh, they made me feel this way, they did that to me, they made me say this, they made me act this way. That's victimhood. They
Mhm.
did that to me. Victorious is like, whatever is happening to me, I am bigger than that.
Yeah. But it's like a mindset. Because you think about, Dr. King, because it's February.
Yes.
He'd walk into the lunch counter with this group of people in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and they could hit him, and they were like, "We're not going to hit back because we have a mindset that we're trying." They wanted to show that they could be bigger than that.
Yes.
That they and it's still people don't get it. Like people go out. I studied the sociology. I was a sociology major of the riot and the
Cool.
permission structure. That when somebody throws that brick, somebody throws that rock, somebody breaks the glass, then suddenly somebody that didn't even intend to do that suddenly said, "Well, I guess that even though the law says you can't, see 10 people do it, then now I can do it." So but then there's like the person that sits there in the crowd and that doesn't do it in the sociology study wants to ask then the questionnaire is like, why did you not do it when 30 other people did it? You try to find out like what's going on. What's the human behavior pattern, right? To try to figure out why do people move in these group behaviors and why do they not move in group behaviors?
Um, as I'm listening to you, um, I think we're all familiar with the name Arnold Schwarzenegger, ex-governor of California. We all have heard of him. There is a very famous video that was online of him where he was walking down an aisle and people were like shaking his hands or like giving him high five, and he was wearing a jacket and he's going down the aisle and someone spilled something on his jacket. I can't remember if it was like ice cream or liquid or something, some kind of protest.
Hmm.
What did he do? He did not skip a beat. He did not pause. He took off the jacket and keep moving forward. Ah, do you feel that?
Yeah, yeah, that's the that's the nonviolent response or the response they like the mountain response. that I'm not going to get triggered and get, because somebody wants to create a situation. Some people want to create that event. They want to film it. They want, it's in their interest to create the scenario, right? And you want to, if you get triggered or you fall into the trap, people want to set traps. Did you
Mhm.
fall into the trap or you not fall into the trap? And
Mhm.
it's like it's like you had a plan for the day. Are you going to follow their plan or your plan?
Aha,
you
I
know,
love it.
I can follow my own plan.
I love it. So the reason why we bring this up because it is really crucial part of how we interact with ourselves and the world. We can go on day in and day out and thinking um, the environment made me do this. My upbringing and childhood did that to me. My trauma in the past made me act or react this way. And this kind of language is actually disempowering to our own self. And I must pause for a second here and think about what does the word power mean? I see the word power in communication and interactions that power is to enable us to do something. If you empower me, you encourage me, inspire me, motivate me. If you disempower me, you're taking away my ability. You're putting me down. You're making me feel not enough. Well, guess what? Sometimes we don't have to have anyone on the outside to do this for us. Sometimes we disempower ourselves subconsciously.
Yeah, it's the glass ceiling, that we put on ourselves. I always feel like if there's a ceiling where you just walk out the room and you find a room where you can break through it, right? Or you actually realize that you can cut through that, right? The only reason you don't think you can do it is because you told yourself you can't do it.
Perfect.
You spend all your time saying what you can't do. What are you talking about? When do you talk about what you can do? And so a lot of times you look at people and I always look at David Bowie because he pointed out a couple of things. He said, I don't feel successful as an artist unless I put myself into situations where I'm not the best, right? Where I'm treading
Hmm.
water a little bit.
I love that.
So he said, he's like, I don't feel great as an artist unless I challenge my, the preconceived notion. So I'm gonna just, you know, have this image, Ziggy Stardust. I could live on that. I'm gonna just like, well, Ziggy's dead. Now I'm gonna create Aladdin Sane, or I'm gonna create the Thin White
Mm.
Duke. I'm gonna create this other character, right?
Mhm.
He would go in this, this is a point, and now that point is over. I'm gone to the next point. It's very theatrical. You just turn into these. He was theater in music to actually create new characters and kind of have this idea of a self-actualized character. He embodied it. Method acting. You go into a different zone and push it to see like how far can you go. Like it's on the outer edges that you find the new territory. The newfound sound rather than the existing sound. And the innovators go looking for the newfound sound. They don't just rely on the existing sound, which is, a lot of people's first reaction to it is they hate it
Mm.
because it's not known. So
Mhm.
people tend not to like things they don't know.
You know what? Oh my God. Okay. I'm gonna have to like take this from you right now and piggyback on that because I love it. Believe it or not, like 25 years ago, at like quarter of a century. Oh my goodness. When I used to see the phrase communication on job application or some kind of requirement to apply for a job or even a field to study, I used to think communication, oh my goodness, this is so much bigger than me. This is like for executive, for CEOs. This is for like for world leaders, for presidents. That's not for me. That's not. It is so. I love that you brought this up. It's so true. What we don't know, we tend to be like either scared of or not feeling comfortable to approach. And I realized that more often than not, I actually say this with heavy heart because I'm also guilty of it in the past and sometimes in the present. I'm a human trying to do my best. Sometimes we get in our own way.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm sure we
definitely.
all have heard this. I'm
Yeah.
sure we've heard this, and many of our listeners right now they're listening to this and like nodding their head, like up and down. Yep, absolutely. Sometimes we get in our own way, based on our limited perception. So now the question comes up, which is, how do we break out of our limited perception? Step number one to actively listening to what's happening in conversations on the outside and also our internal dialogue. Actively listening. Two, to realize that whatever conversation that's happening on the outside with other people or even on the inside within ourselves, we are bigger than that.
Hmm.
And number three, um, change, we all know change is automatic. It happens. We get older, things change, buildings go up and down, there's winter, summer, seasons change. Yet mindful and actual change to growth, that happens mindfully and intentionally. So whatever the space that we are in with our inner voice, our inner world, we can grow and cultivate that to be more on our side intentionally. We have to turn off, we have to push this button. This button is turn off autopilot.
Yeah. With cruise control or like phoning it in. Because a lot of times, what I find is people are comfortable with the toxicity because it's what they know.
That's what they're comfortable with.
Right.
Absolutely. What I know is better than what I don't know. I just had a discussion with that one of my family members a couple weeks ago. They're about to make a change, and I shared this with them. Yep. Human, like human mind, human brain. What I know is better than what I don't know. Safety. I love that you bring this up.
Yeah. I mean, we're living in a change. Like even in the IT world, right? I came up, childhood 70s. It's all like mainframe, old type systems, big mainframes. Now we're living in the age of AI and blockchain and all kinds of new types of mindsets, right? There's a group of programmers that are still stuck on mainframe, right?
Mm,
And they never really got out of it. They feel threatened by AI because AI basically says like AI can be written by a computer. Code can be written by the computer. You don't need the programmer. So those programmers feel like, oh, I'm gonna be like they're gonna knock me out of a job. But the point is like I've always wanted to relearn everything because I saw it. It's like exponentially the tech is changing so fast, you can't just stay in one place.
mm-hmm.
And I knew some people they will. If I stay on this, I'll have a niche. So if the bank wants me to work on their mainframe, nobody else knows it, so I'll be able to do that. So that's fine. You have a niche, but you're limiting yourself. If you limit yourself to that niche, when the big shift happens, then you're out. And that's a hard thing because people want to specialize and I understand that. But you do have to kind of be aware that this is a modern age and there's a lot of new tools, there's a lot of new ideas. It's a global market. I lived in Japan for 2 years.
Oh
Didn't know
wow,
how to speak
cool.
Japanese.
Yeah.
People told me, "Well, you're gonna have a lot of trouble if you go there." And I'm like, I felt like after 2 years there, I wanted to stay there. I didn't want to come
Mm,
back. So the mindset of the people around me was like, "Oh, that's gonna be difficult. That's gonna be hard. You won't be able to do it. You won't understand the culture." I ended up loving it, and then I found out it's like, hey, I'd like to go other places. So like you have to push yourself outside your comfort zone, as you said, because if you don't, then the things will get pushed on you.
hey, listen, we have this thing in common. It's really comical and it's funny, and I feel like I have to bring this up. I love that you shared your experience in Japan and what people told you, what it might be like, and what your actual experience is like. Because when I started doing my research and delve deeper into communication and taking the subject to heart and basically build my life around it. Some people were telling me like, what are you going to do with communication? What kind of job are you going to get with communication? It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
funny to hear about this because now it's my life. I travel the world talking about communication. I'm an author. I produce books and I share with people, high in demand on interviews, and people go like, "What are you gonna do with that?" Well, let me find out for myself,
Yeah, we
please.
well, the thing is, like, it's like the newfound thing. People know, like, what's comfortable. There's a lot of people like to stay in the box. Out of the box thinking is its own reward, because when you're out of the box, then you actually have your own brand, where you have your own point of view, and that point of view can be, you know, can be talked to other people. You can communicate to other people. You can sell as a service. You can sell as a product. It becomes its own benefit. And, a lot of people are scared of that because they say, "Well, I don't know that. I don't know, like, I'm in the new territory, like, it's undiscovered territory." You're a pioneer. You go out there as a pioneer, then you bet the benefits of being a pioneer.
You know what? I really love that you bring up this phrase. Um, Inside the box or outside the box, we all familiar with this saying, we all familiar with like what that means. And I have to tell you from my experience and research, there's a reason why many speakers out there and many books out there and many sessions always talk to us about thinking outside the box, behaving outside the box, breaking the mold and do something different. Now, one of the reasons why this is important, and I hope everyone is listening to this, they can take my words to their and to their heart and take time and reflect on it. When we are stuck in a mold or a box, behaving in a certain way and any other way is not the right way, these people who are stuck in the box, I'm going to say this mindfully, maybe not people, but minds, okay?
Yeah.
It can be hurtful. I'm not trying to cause pain or hurt anyone, but it's very crucial to bring up. Uh, Minds and attitudes that are stuck in a specific form or a box are much easier to manipulate.
Yes.
Because once I find out what box you're in, and let's be clear, not everyone out there wants you to do fantastic, wants you to do good, wants you to grow, wants you to be the best version of you. A lot of people out there like looking like, what can I get out of you? What's in
Yeah.
it for me? So when someone becomes aware of the box that you're in, they know exactly which angle to approach you and then manipulate you, your emotions and thoughts to be able to get what they want out of you. I am going to say this with very heavy heart. I choked a little bit when I say this because me and my team, we posted about a month ago online, is communication manipulation, and that attracted a lot of attention. No, communication is not manipulation. Manipulation is manipulation. And we cannot control the ones who are looking to manipulate us or take advantage of us, yet we can protect ourselves to think outside the box, behave outside of the box, and break the mold and always wonder, what if, what else?
Critical thinking. Like
I
the
love it.
critical thinking is a big thing because like you could be given a multiple choice like SAT type of question, right? Or you can give a blue book question. When I went to college, I went to Bowdoin College, and it was more Socratic method, more open blue book, more oral exams.
Yeah.
Because the professor wanted to see at the end of the semester, did you actually comprehend what he taught you, and can you
Comprehend.
put it into action in your own
Mm,
words, and not just pick A, B, C, but tell me in your own words what these concepts mean and how you would apply them. And I found that that method of learning has helped me learn how to learn and continue to learn and
mm,
to ask questions and not just take verbatim what somebody says to be true, challenge it and understand it and say, what do you really mean?
mm,
What is this saying? Is like, what's the point? Why are you saying it? Is there a benefit or to you or someone else? Is there a benefit to me? Like, what is going on here? And a lot of people just take something like, hey, these people are X. Oh, because he said that they must be X. Like, why is he saying it? Are they really X? What is X? Why would you call it X? It's like, are you going to push on it or are you just going to take it?
You know, I think our next podcast, Phantom, needs to be like 3 hours. Just FYI. And what comes up for me right now, I'm actually, to be very frank with you, the things I'm talking about, the things that I'm bringing up right now, I don't think I would have the courage to bring up and talk about maybe 10, 15 years ago, to be
Mm,
really honest with you. Being outspoken and being real, it can invite a lot of critics. And let's be frank, all right? And critics are not necessarily good or bad; they're just critic. That's it. You
yeah.
know, some people say constructive criticism. I guess that means there's deconstructive criticism. I didn't think about this before.
Or destructive criticism.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You're familiar, I am very certain you're familiar with the song Sweet Dreams
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in the 70s?
Yeah. Yeah.
50 years ago. That song is so powerful. People listen to it, it goes like, oh, it's a beautiful song. But have you really listened to the words? Some people out there to get you, some people out there looking to be gotten,
Hmm.
some people like to be used, some people like to use. Basically, it's the idea of so many different mentalities and personalities out there. And honestly, frankly, none of them is wrong. It's just everyone trying to figure out their own path in life.
Yeah.
Now, the crucial part to understand here is, how am I taking care of myself? Am I building enough space, threshold, a cushion to actually protect myself? Or I'm open for anyone to like do to me whatever they want, to do to my mind whatever they want. If they
Mhm.
want to take advantage of me, if they want to help me, or they want to disempower me, like, I understand surrendering to the universe is really important. Surrendering to the people, we need to do this very mindfully.
Yeah. Well, we learned the lessons of the 40s, because
Yes.
there's a lot of things that people like. History to me is very important. Reading is very important. Comprehension is very important. There are a
Mhm.
lot of things. There's not a lot of new things under the sun. There's a lot of,
Mm.
I always, being a political science major, I read about the balance of power.
Mhm, mhm.
We learn about like the Cold War, right? And the psychological warfare, different types of, the art of war. And you look at
Yep.
certain power structures and why, you go back to empires like Eritrea, you go like a Roman Empire, look at all kinds of empires and say, what was being done? Why was it being done? What were the strategic decisions?
Mhm.
And what are the decisions that are being made and how power gets power? And then, like, well, how can you, as a common man, common citizen,
I love
how
that
do
you said
you
that.
deal with structures like that? How do you actually succeed when you have these
I love
forces,
it.
right? And
Yes,
and
I love it.
it's a matter of thinking, right? It's like you have to think and you have to do actions, actionable activity based on what you absorb internally and externally, and don't let yourself be the one that's stomped on or the one that's pushed. Like, figure out how to stand up.
I really like that you bring this up, because the word power is gonna sound comical, but it's true. The word power has power to it.
Yeah.
you know, I think we might have heard this before, but honestly, for me, it has been confirmed for my research. The ones, it does not matter, human being, male, female, it does not matter. The ones who are like really hungry for power, these are the people that should not have power.
Yeah, well, that tends to be the history lesson.
and And the ones who actually do not care for power, these are the ones that power should be delegated to. Now, I'm going to pause for a second here and bring up something really important, because this is introduction to a next point that I want to bring up. It's actually really profound. To be aware of our inner power and outer influential power is crucial. There
Mhm.
is a reason the title of my first book is Empowering Communication Unleashed. What that means, we all have power within ourselves. Are we going to unleash it? And in combination, I love that you said you studied sociology. In combination of sociology, psychology, and communication, I can tell you right now, I heard this quote a while ago and it stayed with me every single day. I remember very clearly and vividly. Unexpressed expression causes depression.
Yes.
Unexpressed expression causes depression. So when we unleash our inner power, we express it and we practice that, we cultivating our inner power. And when we have cultivated, grounded, solid inner power, the external influence, external power, it becomes not as effective. It becomes a lot more like almost an option. I get to choose what
Yeah.
influences me, what impacts me. Why? Because I cultivated my mountain.
Yeah, you definitely. Because it rolls off you because you won't get triggered to jump into the crowd and throw the rock, right? You'll know that, like, well, why should I do that? Like, that's not my plan. That's your plan. Well, why would I? Why do I have to follow your plan? There's no reason I have to. And that's a lot of people say, well, that's an extreme example, but there's a lot of people throwing rocks that
Hmm.
maybe didn't intend to throw rocks, but they're doing it.
Subconsciously, they're programmed that way. They're not aware that they're doing it. And I was guilty of it too, FYI. That's how I know. Yep.
But I want to thank you. It always goes by quicker than I ever imagined. And we hit the hour mark. That's the way we do it here with these conversations. I think we had a very expanding conversation, very thoughtful conversation. I hope people go to your URL, mariowissa.com. And if people go there, I just want to mention, like you mentioned to the audience, like what happens if people click on your link?
Ooh, so many exciting things. I love this question. There's actually something else I want to share with you, but really quick about my website, my mariowissa.com, MARIOWISSA.com. There are so many things you can do. For one, you can take a free assessment to find out your communication style, and only simple 15 questions. You get the results immediately just for your own self. I do not get this information. FYI, this is only for you. You get the
Mhm.
information. If you want to share it with me later, that's fine. You also have the option if you click if you hover your mouse over Get Empowered, you also have the option to get free chapters of all my 3 books. All you have to do is just like sign up. You get the free chapters. And also, I'm offering 30-minute free session 101. And this has been really popular. So book quickly because many sessions are getting booked. Um, there's something else I want to, as we're wrapping up here,
Yeah,
Phantom, right?
yeah,
Okay, so I have been doing podcasts for about 3 months right now, and it has been amazing experiences. I get interviewed a lot, and I realize there's the common thread in a lot of the communication discussions I have, and the common thread is how to deal with conflict, conflict resolution. And I know as you're shaking your head now, like, no, Mario, we need to have a podcast for this, but we can have a podcast about this later.
yeah.
I feel like really important to share this with people. Then I can let you go. That when we are faced with a challenging misunderstanding or a conflict in a situation, we need to realize the 3-1-2 method. Really quick, what I mean by that is we need to bring up 3 positive things that are happening in this situation, bring up one aspect that we need to work on and improve. And two, come up with two actionable steps to make this happen. Three, focus on positive. One, what is it that we need to work on, the situation or character or person? And two actionable steps.
Mm.
This is the like ultimate solution to go through any conflict, any misunderstanding. Take the time and practice those three. And at the end of the day, please, from my heart, kindly reminding you that you are just dealing with humans. Furthermore, you are just a human who is doing his or her best, and your best will get better with time. Thank you, Phantom, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's great advice. You've given people practical ways to actually implement, actionable steps. That's we're all about that. So I'm very happy you offered that to everybody, and you showed everybody like a method, a practice that they could actually implement. And I appreciate that. I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electricos podcast. And we'll get this out to the rest of the world later today. We were live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I want to thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for making this happen.